Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geopolitical analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Thursday, everybody. First up, my apologies. There is some construction near my office, and so I'm recording this in a separate room, and there's a bit of an echo. I hope this isn't too distracting. First up, we have some quick updates related to the housing crisis, which we need to cover. State-run financial flagship outlet, the Securities Times, published a special article yesterday trumpeting that recently the real estate market has released clear signals of a more relaxed policy, adding, quote, "To further boost the real estate market and stabilize the confidence and expectations of potential home buyers, restrictive real estate purchase and sale policies in non-first-tier hotspot cities can be abolished as soon as possible based on local conditions," end quote. The market has taken this as a very strong sign that the government may be throwing in the towel and going full stimulus to pump the housing market back up. And in trading yesterday, shares in battered developers skyrocketed in Hong Kong on these investor bets. Some of China's most broken developers, with shares extremely low after years of losses, saw prices rocket. China Evergrande, for example, jumped 82%. Sunic was up 70%, and Kaisa advanced almost 27%. Again, these are all off very low bases. Country Garden saw a 20% boost, helped, as we remember, by news that it averted a default this week. We note that between the two, Evergrande and Country Garden have debts totaling almost $500 billion. Analysts warn that much of this market excitement, however, is highly speculative from institutional investors betting on future stimulus. Quote, "Some hedge funds are speculating on more stimulus. The distressed developers are definitely the speculators' pick to bet on stimulus as they see the biggest delta to policy news," end quote. And indeed, China-based analysts themselves remain deeply concerned about the real estate outlook. In a report published this week by China Real Estate Information Corp, the research firm predicts that new housing supply in first-tier cities in September, which is traditionally one of the best months for new supply, will total 2.28 million square meters. Quote, "A sharp year-on-year decline of 52% and a month-on-month decline of 7%, end quote. Chinese financial media outlet Caixin, in an article penned by the financing department head at a major Chinese real estate company, warns that current stimulus and easing measures will not save the market over the medium to longer term. The article argues, quote, "Last week's policies will undoubtedly stimulate the property market in the short term. However, after the National Day holiday in early October, it is unclear whether this bullish sentiment will be sustainable. Apart from traditional first-tier and so-called new first-tier cities, most cities in China no longer enjoy any demographic dividend, and housing is in oversupply. Household incomes have dropped and unemployment rates remain high. As a result, there is a huge inventory of unsold homes, but the purchasing power of potential buyers is weak. Therefore, this round of policies alone won't be able to rejuvenate real estate markets in third and fourth-tier cities, let alone usher in a bull market," end quote. This warning is not coming from a Western analyst or Western media. This is coming from an executive at a major Chinese real estate company in China's most respected financial publication. Next up, we have 2 more developments to cover. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit that like button. Liking, sharing with someone who you think could get some value from these types of episodes, and subscribing. Only 50% of regular viewers are subscribed, are all huge helps for the channel. And for anyone who wants to help me keep this channel financially sustainable, open and free to everyone 6 days a week, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. This week, People's Republic of China Premier Qiang is meeting with Association of Southeast Asian Nation Leadership for the so-called ASEAN +3. There have been no surprise developments or announcements from the event, and no new language from the Chinese Premier. For our purposes, we will just briefly note some of the key statements and developments from the meeting. Yesterday, Wednesday, Premier Qiang doubled down on China's official growth target of around 5% for 2023, expressing that the country, quote, is on track to reach it, end quote. Li also said that, quote, China is ready to deepen innovation cooperation with other parties on digital economy, clean energy and new energy vehicles to jointly promote the development of emerging industries and foster more new economic growth points, end quote. At the event, China proposed to, quote, accelerate ASEAN-China Free Trade Area 3.0 upgrade negotiations and strive to conclude negotiations in 2024. End quote. This was one of a list of 39 initiatives proposed by China at the event. China and Indonesia also discussed potentially extending the 142-kilometer high-speed rail connecting the capital city of Jakarta to the city of Bandung, a multi-billion-dollar Beijing-funded project. An Indonesian minister speaking to media yesterday suggested that the extension could be as long as 700 kilometers across the island of Java. Qiang also took the opportunity at this event to criticize Japan's decision to discharge treated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant and to take a veiled swipe at the United States, calling on the Southeast Asian audience to beware of, quote, external interferences, end quote, trying to, quote, start a new Cold War, end quote. On this point of China-US friction, on Wednesday, Prime Minister Li of Singapore expressed, quote, great concern, end quote, on the trend of the US-China relationship, which could, quote, easily stoke existing flashpoints in the region, end quote, adding, quote, should this happen, the peace, prosperity and stability that ASEAN has enjoyed for decades could be undermined, end quote, and, quote, both the US and China need to show leadership to address a whole range of global issues affecting all of us, end quote. Then speaking to the Chinese side on the issue of the South China Sea, the Singaporean Prime Minister expressed, quote, we should intensify efforts to conclude a code of conduct that is in accordance with universally agreed, recognized principles of international law, including the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and also safeguards the rights and interests of all parties, end quote. And finally for today, yesterday we did a deep dive into claims that Huawei's newest flagship smartphone suggests that China may be catching up to advanced Western chip technology faster than expected. This very much remains an open question, and see yesterday's video for the details of that discussion. Washington, D.C., including the White House, is now taking this question very seriously. So for today, we will examine the political reaction in Washington within the context of the wider US-China relationship generally and the technology war specifically. The White House is seeking detailed information on Huawei's latest flagship smartphone. On Tuesday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that the U.S. needed to get, quote, more information on the character and composition, end quote, of the chip in Huawei's Mate 60 Pro. A teardown on the smartphone reveals that the phone has a China-based SMIC 7 nanometer chip. This is the minimum required for rapid processing of data in smartphones and data centers, and still lags those of 4 nanometer used in Apple's current iPhone 14 range. Apple is also widely expected to announce the use of 3 nanometer chip technology made by Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company in their likely soon-to-be released iPhone 15 models. US-based New York Times writes yesterday that Douglas Fuller, an associate professor at Copenhagen Business School, said that China's SMIC appeared to have used equipment stockpiled before restrictions went into effect, equipment licensed to it for the purpose of producing chips for companies other than Huawei, as well as spare parts acquired through third-party vendors to, quote, cobble together its production, end quote. Fuller added, quote, the official line in China of a heroic breaking of the technology blockade of the American imperialists is incorrect. Instead, the US has allowed SMIC continued significant access to American technology, end quote. We should expect all of this to be pulled into US domestic politics. Quote, the reactions to Huawei's announcement are just beginning in DC. Last week, Congress and many officials were on vacation. Expect to see growing calls for more restrictions on SMIC and Huawei, and more pressure on Commerce Secretary Raimondo to react as she realizes how much PRC media has been trolling her with the release of the phone, end quote. Yesterday, Wednesday, Representative Mike Gallagher, chair of the House of Representatives Committee on China, called on the U.S. Commerce Department to end all technology exports to Huawei and SMIC, China's top semiconductor firm, expressing, quote, this chip likely could not be produced without U.S. technology, and thus SMIC may have violated the Department of Commerce's foreign direct product rule. The time has come to end all U.S. technology exports to both Huawei and SMIC. To make clear, any firm that flaunts U.S. law and undermines our national security will be cut off from our technology, end quote. The chairman of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee shared Gallagher's sentiment, also in a statement yesterday calling for an investigation into China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp., expressing, quote, it sure looks like it violated sanctions, end quote. Now, speaking of phones and national security, one more thing to note. Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post reports this week that last month in China, employees at ministries, quote, whose portfolios are focused on investment, trade and international affairs, end quote, were told that they can no longer use iPhones in the office or for work, quote, citing national security risks amid heightened geopolitical tensions with the United States, end quote. The outlet adds that a similar ban is believed to have been in place for years for some other government bodies, particularly in security, quote, but the latest order has expanded that ban, end quote. US-based Wall Street Journal had a similar report, writing that China ordered officials at central government agencies not to use Apple's iPhones and other foreign-branded devices for work or bring them into the office. Quote, the directive is the latest step in Beijing's campaign to cut reliance on foreign technology and enhance cybersecurity, and comes amid a campaign to limit flows of sensitive information outside of China's borders, end quote. This move will likely give further ammunition to those in Western and East Asian countries calling for similar bans on the use of Chinese phones and applications like TikTok in government offices. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Once again, my apologies for the audio quality. Hopefully the echo was not too distracting. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.